Hello everyone, welcome to another video on this channel. In this video, I'll be starting my series on French defense. I'll be looking at the series through a collection of games. I think I have collected about 11 or 12, that really show the ideas clearly in the French defense, because in the French defense there isn't as much theory as in, let's say, the Nada for the martial attack. Instead, there are very similar structures throughout the different variations, and that's one of the best things about it. And I think it's more important to understand those concrete ideas in the opening rather than memorizing theory, especially when, in many cases, you won't always get the line you're hoping for. As some of you may know, the French defense begins with e4 and e6. And now, the main option here is d4 for white, but there's also some tricky gambits or tricky lines, at least with knight c3, d3, knight f3, d3, knight c3, b3, queen e2, and there are a bunch of others like that. But the thing about these anti-French lines, and unlike, let's say, the Sicilian, these actually provide us usually with a better position, unlike in the Sicilian where it's usually equal and mostly Josh, like in the Alpen Sicilian. It's one of the reasons why I like the French, because everything is mostly forced, and for white to keep his starting advantage, he has to go d4 in the second move, and then after d5, he only has four options, four good options, and uh, two of those have all of those have very little theory if you play them correctly. Those are e takes d5, the boring exchange variation, e5, which I'd say under the 2000 level is the most common response you're gonna get, knight c3, the classical variation, and knight d2, the Tarrasch variation. These are the four main responses. I think bishop d3 is also a move here, and that's about it, because this e-pawn is immediately under pressure and white has to either move it or defend it. So I thought a good introduction to the French defense would be to show you the game between Tigran Vladimirovich Petrosian and Peter Clarke. Petrosian had the black pieces, and Clarke had the white ones. So Clarke opened with e4, and then Petrosian responded with the French defense with e6. And now, out of all these options I've shown, Clarke went with the main line, d4 and d5. I said the French defense is a very solid opening. And I'll just tell you a few key points to remember. c7 to c5 is a very common break in the opening, challenge white center. This c8 bishop we have is usually our worst piece, and it will take some time to get it out. And the best way to attack the pawn chain that white usually builds, we'll look at that more later, is at the base. And the last thing is the pawn structures will usually be very closed, so there will be a lot of slow strategic maneuvering of pieces. In this position, Clarke went for the advanced variation, e5. Now this structure here that you see on the board with d4, e5, d5, and e6 is known as the French structure. This structure occurs in nearly every single French variation, except a few, namely the exchange variation and the open Tarrasch. But on all the others, you'll normally see this structure, and our general concepts and ideas are usually going to be the same. We usually go c5 right away, and now this attacks white center at the base, and then after which and let's say he doesn't do anything. Let's say he goes knight c3, we can just take. After white takes, knight c6 kicks back the queen. Let's say it moves to d1, and then we simply win a pawn. And already, as you can see, yes, white made a mistake, but we already have two center pawns and we're up a pawn. And as you'll see in the French, we'll usually have a lot of play in the center, unlike in many other openings where we're usually attacking on the flanks. These center pawns will nearly always stay in the center, and they are rarely debunked. In the game, Clarke responded with the best move, c3. Now, to getting ready to take the d-pawn with your pawn rather than a piece. And usually you'll see this by all your opponents. Some of them might try to be tricky with knight f3, but if once we go knight c6, c3 is pretty much their only option. Knight b2 is a wild gambit, but some people like that. But most of the time, it's pretty much harmless, because even after a position like this, let's say, we can simply just develop a piece to e7 and later to f5, which is another common idea you'll see in the French. We reroute the knight from e7 to f5. Sometimes we get it from h6 to f5, but usually it ends up on f5. And even if white is able to retake here comfortably, we have two center pawns here, and white only has one, and we're not lagging behind in any development at all, unlike the Sicilian defense. So again, Clarke responded with the best move, c3, and then knight c6, putting more pressure on the pawn, and now knight f3, defending the pawn. Now queen b6, and once again you can see we're putting pressure, as much pressure as we can on the pawn. And a great thing about the French is that your pieces get developed almost instantly. As you can see, black is the one with the lead in development here. Some might say it's not good to develop the queen, but the queen cannot be attacked here, and it's already making threats. As you can see, it's attacking the pawn on b2, which is the base of this pawn in this pawn chain. So if we get rid of that pawn, it's going to be easier to get rid of the other pawns. So after queen b6, Clarke went for one of the main lines, a3. The idea of a3 is to go b4 later on. And b4 just challenges this pawn, and if we don't do anything, he'll take, and white will be up a pawn and have a bind over position, which is why black usually goes c4 in this variation. And this c5 to c4 advance is very common in the advanced variation. Black hopes to block up the queen side in hopes of taking advantage of these light squares in white's position with his minor pieces. For example, here, these squares are already controlled by our pawns. Well, not this one or this one, but these three are controlled by our pawns, as well as f5. And white cannot put a piece there, which makes it very hard for him to maneuver his pieces. And he has to be extremely patient. And his main idea is the b4 break, which is why we want to control this b3 square as quickly as we can, as you will see later on. So white played g3 here in order to get his bishop out, as it can on e2 it's not really doing anything, and it'd be better on g2 or h3. Bishop d7, bishop g2. I would recommend going this position knight a5 first, controlling the square, which means that the b4 break does not work right away. You will go bishop d7 later on, but when you go knight a5 first, b4 just loses a pawn here after c takes b3. But after bishop d7, the b4 break still doesn't work. But it's easier for white to prepare it with like knight bd2, and we don't have as much pressure on that square. But bishop g2 was played, and black castles queenside, which is another common idea, especially in this variation. And in this variation, black usually wants to pawn storm the white king. And Clarke obliges with castles. Now knight a5. Now you have firm control over the center, over the square, and this just puts a bind on this on the queen side, which means that all the white has to play on the king side, and if he doesn't, he will have a worse position in a quick time. Knight bd2 was played. H6. Black is trying to start his pawn storm. Rook e1. Knight d7. Now the kingside pieces are finally getting developed, which is another common idea where you'll see this bishop and knight usually get developed much later, and this bishop usually gets developed last. This rook usually might stay on h8. Sometimes it'll come to g8 or f8 if black decides to castle. But these kingside pieces will come out a bit more slowly, while the queenside pieces will come out at no time at all. Knight f1 was played. Knight f5. As you can see, the knight is coming to this customary square. Knight e3. Knight takes e3. Rook takes e3. Now bishop e7. Black develops his last piece and might bring it to g5 later on. He might just go f6 and break in the center. So there are a lot of different ideas for him. Rook e1. White brings his rook back. Now queen b3. You have officially you have gotten a huge amount of control over this square. Queen a2. And now bishop a4. Now the queen side is plugged up and completely in control by black. This also means this king is very safely placed on the queen side with no harm from white. Now black can turn his attention fully to the king side. Bishop e3. King b8. And if you watched my previous video, you'll know that this king b8 or king b1 idea, if for example the king was on c1, it usually moves to b1 later on. It's a very common idea when you castle queen side, especially in opposite side castling, as it enforces these pawns better and gets your king out of any nasty discoveries or checks on this diagonal. Rook a d1 is played. White gets another rook to the center, but since this position here is so closed, these rooks aren't really doing anything on these squares for now. But if white finds a way to open it up, then they will become powerful. Queen c2. Well, black wants to trade off queens and then maybe put his bishop on b3 or d3, where it'll be pretty much unremovable. And especially on b3, where if you take the bishop, the knight comes back to take it. But white obviously doesn't want that, so he goes rook d2. Now queen f5, bringing the queen back. Rook f1. Now g5. Black has started his pawn storm. h3, h5, knight h2. And I would just like to take a moment to point out something here. A few moves before, the queen was all the way on this other side of the board, and now it's quickly made its way to f5, and it's just assisting in the kingside attack, which is one of another key aspect of the French, that our pieces will usually maneuver from one side of the board to another in no time at all to be more, and they usually take flexible positions. For example, this bishop can go to h4 if not now, of course, because it's attacked and has a pawn blocking it, but later on this bishop might go to h4, f6, or it might go to b4 if right now I'm saying if there were no pawns blocking it. So all your pieces are in extremely flexible positions nearly all of the time. h3, h5, and now knight h2, and now rook dg8. Black's pieces are shuffling to the king side, where the action will take place for the remainder of the game. g4. Now this was a slip up here. f4 would have been the better move because that sort of closes down the position to g4, and then h4. And now it's black is slightly better because of his space advantage, but it's a bit hard to break through, and black will have to certainly work. But g4 just makes it so much easier. Queen g6, moving the queen back. Bishop f3, h takes g4, bishop takes g4, knight c6, and now the knight has done its duty, restricting play on the queen side, and now joins other pieces in the attack on the white king. It is important to note that black cannot be too careless, such as also retreating the bishop on a4 here, back, because of course b2 to b3 and b2 to b4 will quickly open up the b file towards our king, and that will leave it in a worse position. That will leave us in a very bad position. f3, bishop d8, a bit more piece maneuvering from both sides. Knight e7, rook e1, rook h6, knight f1, rook h8, bishop g3, and now comes the move. Rook takes. Actually, this is a strong exchange sacrifice, which Petrosian was very fond of doing at the right moments. And after this, it was extremely smooth sailing for Petrosian. Rook takes h3, queen g2, queen h7, knight e3, knight g6, knight g4, knight f4. Now you're attacking the queen, and you have such a strong outpost here that white is pretty much all forced to give up his other bishop. Bishop takes f4, g takes f4, king f1, rook g3, attacking the queen. Queen f2, queen h3 check, king e2. The king's trying to run, but he won't find any comfort because of rook g2. Now your queen is pinned to the king, and there's nothing white can do here. After rook g1, rook takes f2, knight takes f2, and queen h7, rook h1, and queen g6. White resigned the game. And I really like this game because it demonstrated many of the key principles of the French defense, such as maneuvering your pieces, breaking in the center at the right moment, or not, and attacking on the king side. And I think the French defense is a counter-attacking opening if you use it correctly. And I hope you will learn a lot in these collection of games I'm going to show you through the series. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and comment, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.